My name is Josh, and welcome to Hide and Seek Archives, a podcast where we talk about things supernatural, cryptid, or unexplained. Hi everyone, I've got William Barnett here who has had some really awesome encounters. Hi William, how are you?
I'm doing alright, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. If you'd like, you can go ahead and tell us about your first encounter.
Okay, so my first encounter happened when I was probably 12 years old, I guess I was, and back in Alabama where I'm from, and so obviously I'm a big hunter. I'm an avid hunting outdoors guy. I hunt, fish, pretty much anything I can do outdoors. Definitely love the woods. I grew up in them, and so it's one of those things where, you know, I knew the woods like the back of my hand. I know what's in the woods. I know where to go, stuff like that. So I was out hunting, deer hunting, and after school one day, and I told my mom, I was like, hey, I'm just going to go hunt, and it was our family land, so obviously, I mean, it wasn't a big deal, never really worried about anything happening or anything like that, and so I went down, got into a stand, and was hunting and all, and I remember it was probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock or whatever, because I checked out of school, and I was in the stand watching. I hadn't really seen anything. I mean, I was seeing some does here and there, but nothing that I really wanted to shoot. No shooters. I was chasing a buck that I'd been seeing on my game camera and all, and I mean, and so I was like, well, I'm not seeing anything here, so why don't I get down? I'll try to sneak around to the other stand, which was clear on the other side of the ravine, and there's a big holler down there, and so I was about to get down, I was getting down and all, and I was walking, and then I got probably about 75 yards from my stand, and all of a sudden, like 4 or 5 does just like take off, like hightailing it, like right past me, and so I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking there's a big buck around here, like, that's chasing them maybe, and like, I'm about to shoot this thing, so I'm like, well, I crouched down beside this tree, because I'm like, if I walk any further, I don't want to like scare it off or miss an opportunity at a big deer. So I crouched down beside the tree and got ready and all. And as it was getting closer, the rustling started getting closer and all. I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking like, this thing must be massive, because like it sounded just huge. And I'm like, this has got to be like a world record deer. Like, I'm about to take this massive deer and like, you know, we're going to have deer steaks for a long time. And so as I steadied and I was looking, you know, and all, trying to see, I was looking in the direction where the does came out and all, trying to see if there was a buck come out and all. And what came out was not a buck. Instead, it was this creature comes out, and it had to be every bit of 9 feet tall. And just like broad and massive at the shoulders, and I mean, this thing had to be pushing 1,000 pounds, and it was like, had like pale white skin, and I had heard rumors, of course, you know, growing up about that and all, like a legendary Bigfoot that's white and all, and something that, you know, people had seen and all, but I didn't really think too much about it. I believed in Bigfoot, but at the same time, I was like, I knew what was in those woods. Like, I'm like, I've been on my family's land forever, so like, I know what's in here. Like, it's no big deal. So, as this is all transpiring, and like, I'm like frozen, because I'm like, I've got 2 options here. Like, I can shoot at this thing, but really, my 270 is not going to do a squat against this thing except make it mad. It's probably going to kill me. No one's ever going to find my body, and like, that's going to be it. Like, and I'm like, I'm not going to make a run for it either, because this thing can definitely outrun me. Like, I'm not stupid. So I'm standing there, like, mouth, like, on the ground pretty much, like, just frozen and, like, trying to wrap my mind around what's happening and all. And I remember as I was watching, it was just, I mean, it felt like forever, but in all honesty, it probably wasn't. This thing just, like, starts walking towards where the direction the does went into the woods on the other side of the wood lines. And so as he's walking, like, I'm just sitting there and just, like, still in shock of, like, what am I seeing? I don't know what this is. Like, well, I mean, I had an idea, but I'm like, yeah, I don't know if anyone's gonna believe me for sure if I tell them I seen this or whatever. And so, as he gets right into the wood lines where the does walked in, I, like, try to take a step back to, like, because I mean, I figured he's far enough away, and, like, I was about to back out of there, and I step on a stick, and so, like, I'm, like, freaking out now because I'm like, this thing's gonna hear me and I'm dead. Like, this thing's heard me and it's over at this point. But luckily he just, like, turned slightly, looked to the side, and continued walking into the wood lines. And needless to say, that was the end of my hunting trip. But I didn't really and then, of course, I didn't really say anything about that at all to anyone for about 4 or 5 months. And then I was out working with my granddad one day and on the farm, and he was asking about the hunting trip and everything and how it went. And I was kind of hesitant as to what to say. I didn't really know what to say at that moment. And he asked me, he's like, you saw something, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, did you see the white thing? And I was like, yeah. And I'm just like, what? Because I'm like, you've seen this too? Or, like, you've heard about it? Or, like, what's going on? Like, do you think I'm crazy? And he's like, he said, that thing's been on our land for centuries. He said, there's been stories after stories. He said, we let people hunt on it sometimes, and they'll come back and say they saw it. And he was like, I've saw it a few times. And I'm like, what do we do about it? And he's like, well, you let it live in peace, and there you go. He's like, hopefully we get some, he said it doesn't really mess with the deer too much, but he's like, just let it live in peace. And it was here first, so we let it live. And to this day, I mean, I've heard stories that it's still out there. I mean, I haven't seen it personally anymore, but that's a day for sure I will never forget, because, I mean, I was probably only a good 75 yards away from it when I saw it. So.
And did you happen to get any facial features on it, or did it not look directly at you?
No, I mean, when it turned to the side, I mean, I could make out facial features for sure. But, again, I couldn't, at the time, I wasn't really thinking too much. I was, like, in shock, so I was, like, trying to figure out exactly what I was looking at and if it was real or if it was like a dream or something. And so, I mean, once it turned to the side, I did get, like, a glimpse, but, I mean, just, like, very little. But I did, once it turned to the side, I could, like, see it, like, a nose and, like, an eye and stuff like that. But it was really kind of one of those things where I was kind of frozen in the moment.
And you said it was white. Was it like a pure white, or was it more like a gray white, or? No,
I mean, it was like almost like a pale white, it almost looked like an albino, to be honest. Like, it almost looked like that shade of white. It was, like, palish and kind of looked like that. But I mean, it was definitely odd, because, I mean, to my knowledge, that's the only white Bigfoot, white Sasquatch I've ever heard of. So, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool that I was able to get a glimpse of it.
That's pretty amazing. Do you think it was after the doe?
Maybe. I mean, like I said, it was about 4 or 5 does. I mean, maybe it was after the does. I definitely think the does, like, got its attention, but I don't know necessarily if it was, like, after the does or if it was just, like, curious as to kind of what the does were doing, or, like, just curious about the does in general. But I mean, to my recollection, I mean, I don't remember ever finding any, like, dead does or anything. So I don't really think it was after the does, but I think the does caught its attention from whatever it was doing and decided that he was going to follow the does.
Okay. Have you ever been back out there?
I have. I went out once. I talked to my granddad. So it was about 5 months after that happened, and we went back out there, and I mean, there was Bigfoot signs. I mean, like there was trees, like broke off and stuff like that. There was like arches and everything like that. That I mean, it was definite Bigfoot signs in there. There was like this big it looked like almost like a nest almost, but it was like huge and it was like on the ground, and so I'm guessing maybe that was like a bed or something. But I mean, as far as that goes, I was like, man, I'm just gonna let this thing live in peace. I don't really want to bother it anymore. And I don't want to get caught out here with it by myself either. Because what if I'm out there just looking around and then I stumble upon this thing and I don't have a gun with me.
Yeah.
So I mean, and like I said, I was about 12 at the time. So I mean, I was intrigued, but I was terrified at the same time. I definitely, after that, I would say I definitely took more a lot of my trips were with people. I'm like, I don't want to go hunting by myself necessarily right now. Uh-huh. And so it was definitely changed how that went. It was definitely less solo trips and more with people, with relatives or with friends or whatever.
Yeah. And when you saw it, how fast was it walking?
I mean, it wasn't walking fast at all. It was just kind of like strolling almost. It was almost like it was like it wasn't running after the deer, but it was just like kind of strolling to I mean, it was like, honestly, like you were taking like a Sunday afternoon walk or something, just like walking in the park or something. Like it was just kind of strolling along. I mean, not like it was in any hurry or anything. So that's another indication of why I don't think it was after the deer, because like I said, he wasn't like in a hurry to get anywhere. Uh-huh. He was just kind of strolling along and minding his own business. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to mess with this thing, and then get him mad, and then he does run and then attack me.
So it seemed to at first not notice you were there until you stepped on the stick.
Well, no, I don't think so. Because I mean, like I said, I had by this time, I mean, where my stand was positioned, it was like looking down into like the ravine or whatever. But this was on the other side of the ravine that it happened. But I was walking down towards it. But like the way I was positioned, like it was almost like he was like the does ran past me, but so like that was like at the bottom of the ravine where it started, and so I like got behind the tree when the does ran behind me, like ran beside me, and so like he was coming. It was like he was having to like travel uphill, but it wasn't like a huge distance. I mean, I'm probably about maybe 15 yards, 20 yards that it had to walk. But it was like going uphill. But as soon as the does had passed me, I'd got behind this big pine. So I mean, really, unless he was like right in front of me, he wouldn't have saw me. Or unless he was like actively looking for me.
Yeah.
And then plus, I mean, I was wearing camouflage and all that too. So I mean, it was kind of blending in too. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And when we spoke earlier, you were talking about your second encounter. What happened with that?
Yeah, my second encounter was kind of it was a bit faster than my first one. I mean, it happened pretty fast, but I was dating a girl, and we had just broken up recently, and so I was going to get all my things, like my clothes and my dogs and all that and stuff. So I was going to her house, which her house is, like I said, it's on an Indian burial ground, so it's kind of a weird situation where it's on an Indian burial ground, so like it's supposedly haunted anyway, and very creepy to be at anyway. And so I had called her and I was like, hey, like, is it okay if I go and get my stuff? She's like, yeah, no one's home, but your stuff's on the porch and you can get your dog, whatever, and all that. So I remember I was driving up to her house, and her house is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, her closest neighbor's probably 5 miles away. And so I remember, like, I had got on the dirt road to where she lives at, and I saw this thing, like in the road, and my first initial thought was, well, it's a dog, or maybe, like, a large dog, or a bear, maybe. And so, like, the closer I got, I probably got maybe 10 yards, like, almost to it or whatever. And so, like, I stopped, and it, like, stood up. And to the right is this hill that's, I mean, straight up and down, like, just ridiculous incline. I mean, just a hill that, I mean, it would take a human, like, a good 25, 30 minutes to even try and get up that, like, halfway up the hill. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I was sitting, as I got up there or whatever, I pulled up, and this thing stands up, and, I mean, it wasn't as tall, probably 7.5, 8 foot tall, but, I mean, probably 500-600 pounds, and it stands up, and in 2 steps, it's cleared the hill. And so I went down to her house, then got my stuff and all, and I called my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend at the time. I was like, hey, like, are you sure no one's home? Yeah, just because I want to verify that no one was home, like, find a trick or anything like that. And so, because I didn't even tell her about my first encounter. Like, I never told her about that at all, because I was like, yeah. But anyway, I called her, and I was like, well, I'm going to sound crazy. I was like, but I just saw a Sasquatch. I was like, I know I did, 100%. Like, and she was like, I believe you. She's like, I don't think you're crazy. She's like, we have Bigfoots out there. She's like, we used to like, see them in the woods all the time. And I'm like, well, thanks for telling me now. I mean, after we break up, I mean, I could have been investigating this whole time, and like, but I mean, no, but she was like, no, she's like, you're not crazy. She's like, I've seen them too. And I'm like, well, that gives me a peace of mind, at least, you know, that I'm not crazy, but that this actually happened. And I was lucky enough to, on my way out of there, I stopped and I got a picture of a footprint, actually, and it was super cool, and just something that I'll never forget. And just like that footprint just validated everything for me too. And I'm just like, phew, I'm not insane. Yeah. Like, not yet, not crazy yet. I'm like 2 for 2 though. So, and I'm just like, man, like, this has all happened. I mean, I was 12 when I saw my first one. I was 20 when this happened, and I'm like, man, like, what is going on? like, this is insane. Like, it's insane to have one encounter, but to have 2, like, and then little did I know I was going to have a third one, like, not even a year later. So that was pretty insane.
What exactly did the one look like that you saw when you were driving?
So it was like, it was completely like black fur. I mean, like it was weird. It was like, because I was expecting more of a brown, but like this was like completely black. And it crouched down, like it was like it had like its arm like over its head or whatever. Uh-huh. It's like crouched down. I don't know why, but when I pulled out, and like when it comes up, like he swung his arm over, and so it was just like standing straight up and down. And I'm just like sitting there, like taking everything in, because I'm like, this is not something you see every day. And, like, you know, obviously it's something that you have to see to believe most of the time. And so I was like taking mental images in my head. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, how do I extract these images on a computer? Like, but yeah, no, it's like he had his arm like over his face. And so like when he stands up, like he swung his arm, and like, you could see his face and everything like that. And, I mean, just his shoulders were massive, like broad and massive. And I'm just like, man, like this thing literally, if I was to like make it mad, like could probably squish my car. Uh-huh. with no problem, and I would probably be dead because this. I mean, and I'm like, I don't know who you call at this point. Like, do you call the police and be like, "Hey, I just saw a Bigfoot," or like, "What do you do?" You know? And so I'm like, my initial thoughts were like, man, like, what happens if this thing like just turns and like hits my car or something like that? Like, I mean, really, what's the insurance gonna think about that? I mean. Excuse me, my car got hit by a Sasquatch, just people are just like, and I'm just like, man, like, it was something that, it was really cool because, like, you could see its facial features and, like, like I said, it was all black fur and, like, I mean, and that's why I thought it was a bear initially because, like, all black but I mean, like, stands up and, like, I mean, obviously his face, like, where there wasn't hair, it was, like, gray or whatever, like around his mouth and like the eyes and stuff. It was like gray. I mean, it's similar to like an orangutan or something, like in the sense of like, like they got fur everywhere except like around their eyes and their mouth or whatever. Uh-huh. Like, and then like his hands were like grayish and stuff like that, feet. And, it was really impressive to see. I mean, it's definitely scary to see those things, but I mean, at the same time, it's like super impressive because it's just like, man, like these things are actually out there living among us. Like, we don't know about it. Like, well, I mean, we know about them, but a lot of people don't believe in them. So
yeah. Well, what do you think it was doing?
I mean, yeah, that's just something I've wrestled with a lot. Is like why it was actually there and what it was doing. I mean, unless it decided to take a small little nap there, but I'm like, that's kind of an odd place to take a nap, but
it is.
I mean, who am I to question what this thing does? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you're, 8 foot tall, 800 pounds, I don't really think anyone's going to question what you do.
That's true.
But I mean, as far as like, I mean, it's the perfect place for a Sasquatch. So, I mean, like I said, it's like a giant valley, like, no one goes down there. Like, there's deer everywhere, like, plenty of food sources, and I'm just like, man, like, I'm not gonna. But yeah, that's definitely bothered me for a long time, just like wondering what it was doing there. But again, I'm like, I wasn't questioning at the time. I'm just like taking this in and like in awe of like what it's doing. So yeah, it's definitely really cool though. It's
it
really
is.
Cool.
It is. So your third encounter, what happened with?
Yeah, so my third encounter was definitely one of the tougher ones to really talk about. It was, I mean, it was a weird day in the first place. Like, it was like it had rained, and so it was like damp, and it was like still sprinkling and all, and like it was cold, and no one was really out. I mean, it was just kind of one of those. It was just kind of odd. It was just a weird feeling that day, and so I was with my mom and my cousins and my brother, and we're like, hey, let's go to the park because I like taking pictures. So I'm like, I want to go take pictures of the park, whatever. No one's out there. Perfect day to go, as far as taking picture wise, because no one's out there. So nature, will be on full display kind of, or people get in your shot or anything. And so, as we were walking, it was like a trail or whatever. And it's kind of odd too, because this park isn't out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like the main road's right there. And so, I mean, as we were going out, we noticed probably 50 yards ahead of us, there was a big tree that was across the trail. And I mean, I thought it was kind of odd because I'm like, there hasn't been any storms around here or anything like that. I mean, I don't know why the tree's down unless it was just old and it fell, which, I mean, I could see that, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so as me and my cousin, we went ahead of them, my mom and my brother and them, my other cousin, me and my cousin, that we walked ahead of them all, and we came up on the log, and as we got to the log, this head pops up, and it's just like staring at us. And I'm sitting there, I'm like holding my cousin back, and then all of a sudden there's rocks being thrown, and my cousin and my mom and my brother, all of them, they take off back up the hill, and I'm frozen there. So like I went back a little bit, but I stopped because I looked back to see what it was, and I knew instantly what it was, and like the rocks just kept coming, and a rock goes right beside my head, and like to the point where I could hear the wind coming off the rock.
Uh-huh.
And this thing comes out from behind the log, and it's just standing there, and I probably did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, and I made a step towards it, because my initial thought, I knew what it was, but I wanted to get a glimpse of its eyes. Like, that's the main thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to see its eyes. And so I took a step forward, and the next thing I know, I'm eye to eye with this thing, like literally eye to eye with this Sasquatch. I mean, and it was crazy, and it was insane, because I remember I looked into this thing's eyes, and I wasn't scared. Like it's almost like it was like, it calmed me down. Like, I was fearful and I was scared, like, you know, when the rocks started flying and everything. And then, like, I looked this thing in the eye, and I wasn't scared anymore. It was odd. It was like, when I looked into its eyes, it was like, I almost, like, I got lost. Like, there was something about it. It was like so mesmerizing and like captivating. It just like had me, and it was like, when I looked into the eyes, like it was like I understood it. Like I understood this thing, and it was really odd. And it probably makes me sound insane, but like it's something about it. Like when I looked into the eyes, like I was just mesmerized. Like, it was almost like I wasn't even, like, because I couldn't move. Like, there was nothing. I mean, I literally, I was frozen at that moment. But, like, I looked into its eyes, and it was like, all of a sudden, I understood these things. Like, I understood this creature. I knew what it was. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what it is, but I understood it. And that's something that I wrestle with a lot, because in that moment, it was almost if I wasn't even in control of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was almost like I was part of this creature. It was weird. It was so odd. It's so strange because it's hard to explain, but it's like, I got it. I understood. Like, I knew at that moment. And like that, it's really odd, and it's really strange, and it's hard to explain, but in that moment that I looked into the eyes, it was like I got lost. But it was like I understood it. Like, it was like I was part of it.
Yeah.
And I understood. It was like I could feel its emotions. Like, I could feel emotions, but it wasn't my emotions. It was almost like this thing, like, had emotions and like feelings that I could feel. it was super odd and super, probably one of my favorite encounter I have had, honestly. I mean, the white thing was super cool, don't get me wrong, but this thing was, it was a different level of just like awe. I mean, it was just a different level of like mesmerizing that I can't even explain, really.
And what happened after that?
So the last thing I remember was I was looking into the eyes, and then, I mean, the last thing I remember was I got grabbed by my mom. She had come back and she had grabbed me and like dragged me back to the car. But I remember like looking back too, because I didn't want to leave. Like, I didn't want to leave because it's like I said, it's really weird, but I understood this creature. Like, I was there. I understood it. I knew what it was doing. I knew it wasn't there to hurt us, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But, like, my mom grabbed me, and then I just remember looking back, and it got up, and it was walking through the trees, and that was the last time I saw it. But, that encounter, like I said, is probably my favorite, but it's also my least favorite because that caused me a lot of emotional mess. It caused me a lot of emotional trauma. As far as like, I mean, like I said, I didn't sleep for a good month after that. And it's like I would try to write down what happened in that moment. I was trying to write it down and like understand it and like just write down the emotions and like figure it out. But like it's like you can't write it down. It's like you know it, like it's right there in your mind, but you can't. There's no words for it. Like there's nothing that you can put down on a piece of paper or tell someone that you know is going to change anything because like you know it happened. But it's like it's just there's not the right words for it. Like you can't really put it into words exactly. The feelings, you know, you can't put that into words, into context like that, and it makes me. I mean, it made me an emotional wreck. I mean,
that's understandable.
Because it's weird. It's such a weird day. Like I remember, like being like, I'm going to die when like the rocks were being thrown, and I remember like pushing my cousin back and I remember I pushed him back and I said, run. And I literally thought that I was dead. I mean, because, I mean, I was closer to this thing than anyone at that time because I'd thrown my cousin back like that. And I just remember, like, when I look back, like, just seeing the fear in, like, my mom's eyes. And I was terrified. But then it's like so weird because when I did that and then when I looked into the eyes, it was like it calmed me, and all of a sudden I was calm, and I understood, and so I wasn't scared then. But like it was like I wasn't myself. Like I was. I mean, I won't say mind controlled, but something happened. I got lost. Mm-hmm. And it was like it was almost as if I was this creature, like I was in it, like it was weird. And like I said, I don't know, I don't even have the words. See, I don't, but I wish I did. I wrestle with that all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why, you know, lots of Bigfoot experts and researchers have reached out to me, and I'm like, I wish I had more answers. Like, I wish I could tell you exactly how this happened, you know? Mm-hmm. Wish I could tell you exactly what it was feeling, like what we were feeling. Like, it was weird, but it caused me emotional problems because, like, I mean, I was going through a range of emotions from being, like, scared to death. Like, I was literally on the brink of, like, I thought I was going to die because these were big. I mean, these weren't, like, small pebbles. These were pretty nice-sized rocks. Uh-huh. And it wasn't like, it was like underhanded. These things were like being tossed overhanded at us. And so I was like lost. And it's like, so many emotions happened that day that I don't remember. I mean, like, I don't know how to put it into words. I don't know the right answers. Like, I don't know why this happened. I don't, and the ride home that day, wow, it's probably it's probably the quietest that I've ever heard anybody. Like, there was nothing, no talking, no laughing, no calling anybody, no doing anything. It was silent. I mean, there was really silence for like a whole month, really. I mean, there was nobody talked about it. Nobody did anything. And I was literally on the brink of making myself sick because I hadn't slept at all. Uh-huh. I mean, I didn't sleep. I didn't talk to people. I locked myself in my room. I quit my job because of it. I mean, it was that intense. It was that. It was just that. Yeah, that intense. I mean, I was at my job 12 years and I quit it.
Yeah.
Quit my job. Lost my relationship at the time. Uh-huh. Lost a lot of friends, really.
Did you and your mom ever talk about it later?
We talked about it. Sorry, it's been about 3 years, and we've talked one time about that. And it caused problems. I mean, it caused problems between, between friends. It caused problems between family members because it was, I mean, it's just something that I don't know how to even explain it. And like I said, I've talked to one person besides my mom about that. Because that cost me, like, I feel like I lost a piece of myself that day. Like, I feel like I walked into those woods a whole different person than when I walked out of those woods. And I am someone that, I mean, I'm completely obsessed with Bigfoot and Sasquatch. I mean, I have like 2 binders full of just straight facts of Bigfoot. I have like sketches and everything. I mean, I have sightings, reports, everything documented. I have pictures. I mean, I've researched every different kind of Bigfoot that there is. And I don't know. I mean, it's to that point of I don't really have answers, I don't have, any clear conscience about what happened that day. I don't. It cost me a lot. It's really all I can say is it cost me so much.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to me about it. That's definitely I can understand why that would be emotional and how it would change a person.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I don't have, I don't know, I just not too much,
Yeah.
Too much more I can't say about that, really.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I wish I could have more to say. Had, the answers, but I don't.
Yeah.
Trust me, it tears me up inside every single day. I think about it all the time. When I close my eyes, that image is burned into my head.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get rid of it.
Well, I wish there was something I could tell you that would help.
Yeah,
I mean, I and you said you don't hunt or go outside anymore?
If I hunt, I make sure I go with like 2 or 3 people, and I'm definitely not alone.
Uh-huh.
I have fished, but I fish right here. I mean, there's a lake right in front of my house, so I'll fish there, but I don't go. I used to live in the woods. I mean, I was there 24/7 all the time, and now it's like I just don't do that anymore. I don't, you know, I just don't go in the woods as much as I used to, or really that I, you know, should, because that's where I lived at. That's what I lived off of was, you know, whatever I killed, but
Yeah.
I just don't go in the woods as much anymore.
I understand how something like that could be very hard to describe. You know, anything we feel in general is always hard to describe. You know, we don't, just like we don't know exactly what love is. We can't really ever put that into words either. I'm not trying to compare it to what you experienced at all. I'm just.
I understand what you're saying.
But that you know, it's what happened is incredible, not in any wrong way or right way. What you experienced is I've never heard another story like it.
And I don't know what it is about me, but things just happen. I mean, like I said, I don't know, you know, anything, you know, what's your belief on paranormal ghosts, whatever that is, but I mean, the encounters, I've had 2 ghost encounters. I mean, and then also an attack by a demon, but I mean, that's just something that, that one, I would compare that to the Bigfoot thing right there, because that was literally one pull of the trigger away from killing me right there. But I mean, like I said, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's like, dude, I'm 22. Like, this shouldn't happen. Like, I shouldn't have all of these encounters and stories that, you know, I shouldn't have all these experiences. I'm just 22 years old, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something about me. I don't know. But it's like things seem to be like drawn to me, and I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, I don't know if it's like some kind of curse or what, but I don't know, you know, and it's something that, you know, it makes me scared to do things. It makes me scared to go into the woods, you know. It makes me scared to sleep at night, you know.
Yeah, can understand. Did you want to talk a little bit about the ghostly encounters?
I mean, yeah, they weren't too bad. I mean, like, the first one was at a courthouse in Alabama that's supposedly haunted. It has a face in the window that, of this guy that they were trying to lynch back in the old days, like this African-American guy that was wrongly accused that they were trying to lynch or whatever, and they put him up in the attic of the courthouse to keep him there until his trial or whatever, and he was looking out the window one night, and lightning struck the window, and it like burned an image of his face on the window, and they changed the window out, everything, but I mean, it didn't. The image didn't appear until after he was lynched and all, but they changed the window out. I mean, as many times as you can change a window out, and every time they changed it out, the face would come back. And so then the courthouse burnt down, and so they built a brand new courthouse, and the face showed up again. And so, anyway, we went through there, and we went on a tour, because there was a tour being given that day, so we were like, hey, let's go on that. So we were going through all the different parts of the courthouse and all, and we went down to the basement, and we got down there, and I mean, there's no windows, no nothing, there's no source of light at all. And so we're just all kind of crammed in there, and she was giving like the tour or whatever, and like talking or whatever with no lights or whatever, and it's just kind of, we did that or whatever, we came up, and we got in our car, we started leaving, and Mom was flipping through the pictures, and she got to one picture, and there's this figure of a person behind me. There's like a blue mist almost of like a person. And it was like its arm was reaching out and touching my shoulder. And I was like, I felt like I got touched by someone earlier, and there was no one there.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, this is super odd. So we took it back to the lady giving the tour guide, and she was like, yep, that's the picture. That's a picture of one of the ghosts here. She's like, I've got one almost similar upstairs at the in the courtroom actually. And so she showed us that one, and I mean, sure enough, it was the same exact like blue like person, like it was, and so it was that was very interesting for sure. Very creepy,
Yeah.
for sure. I was very kind of, there was a ghost that touched me. I'm kind of odd, kind of freaked out now. But we went. But yeah, that one was pretty cool. That's a very cool courthouse too. I mean, it's interesting for sure. That face keeps coming back, even though they've changed the windows like a billion times. But yeah, that one was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty cool, but it was scary at the same time. But it was cool because I'm like, we actually got a picture of a ghost, so that's cool. Whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And then my second one was when I was dating that girl that lived on the Indian burial ground. I rode out there. I saw this guy standing there. He looked like an Indian, but like he was like dressed in like older clothes. I mean, not like Indian clothes, but like older clothes. And so like I was watching him, and he was staring at me, and I was staring at him, and my dog was going absolutely berserk.
Uh-huh.
But I was staring at him, and I started backing out, and he disappeared, like just vanished. And I was like, well, why not? I'm like, why wouldn't there be a ghost right here, right now? Because I'm the only one around to see it. I'm like, of course this happens. But yeah, that was the end of that. Like that's the end of my ghost stories. But and then the whole demon thing that happened was absolutely berserk. Like, I mean, just.
Was that at your ex's house or?
No, that was when I was at college actually.
Oh.
Which it was odd. But yeah, that was. It actually started, we believe, at my house. But we believe it like was attached to something. Because the road that I live on in Kentucky has a very dark history, because I live right next to an army base.
Uh-huh.
And back in the day, a soldier went crazy and killed his wife and their kid or whatever, and threw him over the bridge next to my house. And so now there's like a ton of reports of like a woman walking the bridge at night, like looking for her child or whatever, and all, and like crying and stuff like that. And so one day when I was heading to town, my mom was in the car with me, and I took a Snapchat. I sent a Snapchat to my friend. It was just me. And I said something like I'm tired or something, and like I noticed I screenshot her. I'm like, well, that's odd. Why did you screenshot that? Like, I don't, but whatever. So like, she sends it back to me, and she's got this big thing circled, and she's like, do you not see this? And I'm like, wait a minute, because like what she sent me terrified me, for one, because it looked like a clown. Like, it was weird. Like, it looked like a clown behind me. And so like, I mean, there's no smoke or anything. We don't smoke or nothing. There's no sunlight. Like, I don't know what it is. So I just kind of brushed it off. I'm like, whatever, you know. But I said to my mom, like, hey, this is pretty cool, you know. And that's when kind of everything started, when I went back to college. And then they kind of all went downhill from there. As far as like, I've always been big into like the paranormal and stuff too, because I'm like, it's pretty cool. Like, things happen. We don't have answers for them. Like, I want to figure out what's going on, stuff like that. And so, like, I always watch, like, ghost shows and stuff and paranormal stuff. And, I mean, I'm always, like, intrigued by that. And so it was Easter weekend when that happened, when everything started happening for real. Because everyone was going home, but I couldn't afford to go home. So I'm like, because I was going to school in Chicago, so I'm like, I'm just going to stay here. And it was like me and another buddy of mine who lived in Missouri, and he stayed there too or whatever. And so we're just hanging out and all. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'm going to go. I had work to do, but I'm like, I'm not doing work. It's Easter weekend. Like, I'm going to hang out. Like, I'm going to watch this show that I've been watching, this paranormal show, get it over with, stuff like that. And then procrastinate work, whatever. Yeah, that was a big mistake because it was right around, like, there was, like, you know, some big basketball games going on too. So I'm like, hey, you know, I'm going to watch a basketball too or whatever. So anyway, I got my laptop and I went downstairs where he was and I turned on Netflix and I'm like, trying to get a show to watch it. And it was like, sorry, Netflix is having trouble playing its title right now. I was like, oh, darn, well, I will. So, like, I kept retrying, stuff like that, restarted, stuff like that, disconnected, all that, and it just kept saying that. So I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So I clicked on another show because I'm like, hey, well, maybe I can see if this will play, you know? So I clicked on it, plays fine. So then I'm like, well, okay. So then I went back and I clicked on a different one, it was fine. And then I went back to a different paranormal show and clicked it. It said, sorry, we can't play this title right now. And I'm like, well, this is odd because every other show on Netflix is playing. Like, so definitely strange. And so I shut it down, disconnected from internet, reconnected, everything like that. And it finally starts playing. Well, as soon as it starts playing, I felt like every ounce of water was drained out of my body. Like, I felt so dehydrated. Like, I could barely move. And I'm like, dude, I'm not doing well. He's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just, all of a sudden, I feel really, really dehydrated. And so I go up to my room, and I'm like, I'm just go grab some water. So I go up to my room or whatever, and I get my waters, and I come back out, and I'm walking down the hallway, and, like, all the doors are just, like, banging. Like, it was like someone was, like, trying to get in, and they were locked. And I'm like, well, that's weird, because everyone has left. Like, all of the doors were doing that. And I'm like, everyone's gone. And it's not like the wind's blowing. And, like, they're, like, banging like someone's trying to get in. And I'm like, whatever. So, like, I ran back downstairs. I chugged some water or whatever. And by that time, the basketball game came on, so I, like, turned off my computer and started watching a basketball game. And then all of a sudden I start watching a basketball game, and I, like, completely feel, like, super full. Like, I just feel ridiculously, like, full now. I'm like, why did I drink so much water? Like, why did I feel so bad? And so I was like, this is really odd. And so I went to bed that night, had a terrible nightmare, just awful. And so I get up the next morning or whatever. This was Sunday, and I didn't really have a church I went to around there. Like, and so my buddy's like, hey, you want to go to church with me? I'm like, sure, that's fine, whatever, you know. And so we went over to church or whatever, and we're sitting in Sunday school, which he was like, I like to go to the older people's Sunday school because they're wise. And I'm like, well, that's true. So we went there, and I remember, like, I was sitting by myself. There was no one beside me, no one in front of me, no one behind me. And I was, like, listening to the teacher or whatever, who happened to be the pastor. So I was listening to him, and he was like, he was talking and stuff. He's like, Christianity is the #1 religion in the world. And I just remember, like, in that moment, like, I heard this voice, and it was like, just like the angriest, like, deepest voice I've ever heard, that, like, in a mocking tone was like, not for long. And so, like, I'm looking around, I'm like, the closest person to me is like this little 90-year-old woman. Like, I'm sure that was not her. Like, pretty sure this woman did not just say that. And so I was just like looking around, and I left after Sunday school, and I was sitting over there in my dorm room, and my friend came back over there. He left early. He came back and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I was like, "Did you not hear that?" Like, he's like, "What?" I'm like, "That voice." And he's like, "Dude, I didn't hear anything." I'm like, "Weird. Like, that's odd." And so, like, I was watching my girlfriend at the time. I was watching her fish for her because she went home for the weekend, and she didn't want to bring her fish back and forth. So I was watching her fish or whatever, and she was coming home or whatever. Like, weird stuff was happening throughout the day and all. And I just kind of brushed it off. And I had called my mom and I let her know what happened, and she was like, "Get someone to pray for you right now. Like, get someone to lay hands on you." And so, like, there was no one there, obviously, besides my friend and all. And I was watching my girlfriend's fish, and she was coming back, and so she called me. She's like, "Hey, I'm on my way back. I'm over at the dorm in about 30 minutes or whatever." So we were talking about, like, how the weekend went and all. She's like, "Hey," she was like, "Hold on." She's like, "I'm getting tailed by a car here." And I'm like, "Well, be careful, you know. Don't do anything stupid. You know, be careful. Like, pull over if you have to." And so she's like, "Hey, I gotta call you back." And so she hangs up and all. Probably about 10 minutes later, she calls me back and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "I'm sorry about that, but this car was tailing me." I was like, "Well, that's all right." She's like, "It's kind of weird." She said, "But like when that car passed me," she's like, "I saw all kinds of like demonic signs on it and everything." I'm like, so now I'm starting to piece together what's happening, and I'm like I could feel I was different. Like I felt like angry. Like I felt weird, and I'm like trying to breathe. Like it was heavy for me. It was hard for me to breathe, stuff like that. Like I just felt heavy. And I remember we were talking about the demonic symbols on the car and everything. She's like, "I don't feel very good." And I'm like, "Well, you felt fine just now." She was like, I know." She's like, I don't know. She's like, "I just don't feel good." She's like, I don't think I can talk. She's like, "I can't talk to you right now." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, that's weird. And so later on that night when she got there, she got out of her car or whatever, and she was walking up, and I mean, it's Illinois, so it's cold. So she was like, "Hey, I'm cold." So I was just thinking, hey, she's just cold, you know? Like it's Illinois, it's snowing, whatever. She's cold. And I'm like, "Well, here's my jacket." She's like, "No." She's like, "I'm like cold, like on the inside." She's like, "I feel like there's like an 18-wheeler like just sitting on my chest." And I'm just like, at this time, I'm like, bro, there's something wrong with me, because like I feel that, I mean, I was feeling almost the same way. Like I felt very heavy and all. And so like, we got to our dorm room or whatever, I gave her her fish and all. We sat down and we talked for a little bit in the lobby. And then all of a sudden, like the light started flickering on and off. And she like got freaked out. She's like, "Please do not leave me." And then, like I was telling her when I was walking, like when I was walking over there, that I had looked into the gift shop or whatever it is, the bookstore, whatever it was, and I saw like the silhouette of a person, but like everything was locked up. Like there was no one there. Like it was locked up. It was still Easter break or whatever, and people were at home, and nothing opened until like 2 days, and so everything was locked up and all. And I remember telling her that, and she was like, "I think you need to go." And I was like, "Okay." And so she went and like locked herself in her room, like barricaded her room shut. And I just remember that night I went to sleep, and I was having awful nightmares, like terrible things in my nightmares and all. And I remember just talking to my friend about it that was with me, and he was like, "I think we need to pray over your room." And so we like took Bibles in there or whatever. We're praying over the room and all. And then like all of a sudden I'm just like slammed against like the dresser, and like I fall backwards. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." And like I pull up my shirt, and like there's a big like mark and scratch on my back. And yeah, I remember talking. My pastor called, and I don't know why, but like I was so mad at him. Like I was angry with him. Like I just want to tell him to like shut up before he even said a word. I was so angry with him for some reason, and it was just I don't know, man. It was hard. It was something I didn't have control over myself. That I mean, at all. Like I lost control. Like I was cussing people out that were my friends. Like I was doing things that were just insane. And yeah, I mean, it took forever. I mean, like this went on for probably 3 months, at least 3 months. And I remember going to this thing that I didn't want to go to, this like thing at this church that I went to, and this guy like, well, the entire like church service pretty much prayed over me and like laid hands on me, and when he was praying, like, man, like I just felt like a release like off of me, and like he was like, dude, he was like, your chest was on fire when I touched you. He was like, and I just felt like a big release, and I'm like, dude, I felt that release too. But like, yeah, that was insane. I mean, that literally all stemmed, and I mean, I even sent that picture to actual paranormal investigators, and they're like, we have no answers for these. They're like, this is something. They were like, I'd have to say it's demonic, and I'm like, I know it's demonic. This thing took over my life for 3 months. Like, I couldn't sleep in my own dorm room for like 3 months. I had to like stay with my buddy because like I literally saw this thing in my nightmares, and that terrified me. But yeah, that was pretty insane for sure.
And I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was not something I ever want to go through or want anyone to go through ever again.
Man, I'm glad you were able to be prayed over and have that removed.
Yeah, no, that was definitely something that is hard to. I don't know. It's hard to talk about, but especially because like there's just not a whole lot of people in the United States that go through that. I mean, it's more common overseas, but
yeah,
it's just not common here in the United States. So it's like you don't really have anyone to talk to about that.
No, not usually, no.
But yeah, that was. I mean, I've definitely, like I said, I'm only 22, but I feel like I'm like way more mature because I've been through all of this.
Yeah, I don't know too much about demonomic stuff. I know a little bit. Do you feel like that might have brought you closer to God or further away, or?
I mean, I'm kind of weird. Like, I don't know. Like, so like at first I didn't really think too much of like, you know, I didn't think that like because like the guy the paranormal teams that I set up to, they're like, well, this thing, you know, most likely like attached to that picture, and I didn't really think too much of the picture at first anyway, and I'm like, you know, but then I get like super protective, like when they said that, like I got super protective over this picture, like everyone was telling me to delete it. They're like, once you delete it, like that's fine, whatever, delete it. And I'm like, I got super angry. I'm like, no, I'm not deleting the picture. And I mean, I said a lot of words I would never say in my life. I just remember, like my pastor, like after all of this transpired, like he was telling me that, you know, if you're obsessed with the paranormal like you are, like if you watch those shows constantly 24/7 hour, you know, all day, like then it's like that in itself is opening a portal, and that's opening a door. And so anyway, as far as that the question goes, it's weird because I was telling my fiance this the other day. Is I don't feel the same as I did before. Like I don't feel like I'm as close as I was before. But like, because it's almost like I don't have a closure really on that. Like I don't really know, it's like there's this one part of me that I'm just like, still like trying to hold on to, but it's like, I feel like it has brought me closer, but at the same time, it's like I'm not as close as I was. Like I do stuff that I'm not supposed to do, of course. I mean, we're human, we do that,
yeah,
but
exactly.
I definitely. So I think in a way it has, but in a way it hasn't, because I don't feel like I'm on the same level as I was before then. But I think that's kind of the point. Like if Satan's going to send a demon after you, you're obviously somewhere he doesn't want you to be, or like you're doing stuff that he doesn't want you to do, so he's going to try and mess that up.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, like I said, I think it has, but at the same way, I think it definitely hindered that a bit, and it kind of, pushed me away more, like some, but now I'm finally getting back to where I was, I feel like, and definitely staying away from those shows.
Yeah, I've actually heard that before, from a few people actually, that those kind of things will bring things into your life that you do not want.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm staying away from those right now.
Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. No, the thing is like, I know there's people out there that have gone through some things like that, and they just don't talk about it because they don't really have anyone to talk to. So
yeah,
I figured if it can just help someone talk, or help someone to reach out, I figured that's a good thing. So
yeah, that's
totally fun.
That is. Thank you everyone for listening, and I wanted to give a special thanks to William for coming on and telling us about his awesome encounters. And if you'd like to be on Hide and Seek Archives, you can email me at hideandseekarchives@gmail.com. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll talk to you all next Tuesday.